The council chamber stretched higher than any cathedral on Earth. Thousands of alien delegates filled the massive space, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that caught the light like living diamonds, to massive creatures that needed special platforms to support their weight. At the center of it all stood Admiral Kyle Hudson, representing humanity before the Galactic Council for what he hoped would be the last time. Kyle was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 5 years trying to make the elder alien races understand that humans deserved respect. 5 years of being talked down to, laughed at, and dismissed. Behind him stood Lisa Morgan, Earth's chief diplomat, and Commander Ryan Clark, a military strategist who had warned that diplomacy might not be enough. The Xanthari ambassador floated forward. His name was Crystalline Mind, and his body was made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. When he spoke, his voice echoed through translation devices that turned his sounds into words every species could understand. The matter of the human colony world designated New Terra has been decided, Crystalline Mind announced. His tone was casual, as if he were discussing the weather rather than the fate of 3 million human lives. The Xanthari Collective will assume control of this world within one standard cycle. The primitive human structures will be removed and proper civilization will be established. Kyle felt his jaw clench. He forced himself to stay calm. Ambassador, with respect, New Terra is a human colony. We settled it legally according to galactic law. You have no right to take it from us. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not quiet chuckles, but loud, mocking laughter that echoed off the walls. The Korvax representative, a massive creature called War Master Thorax, slammed one of his forearms on his platform. Human speaks of rights, Thorax rumbled. His voice was so deep that Kyle could feel it in his chest. Your species has been in space for mere decades. We have ruled the stars for millennia. You have no rights except what we grant you. More laughter. Kyle looked around the chamber, searching for even one species that might support humanity's claim. He found none. The smaller, weaker species looked away, afraid to draw attention to themselves. The elder races, the ancient powers that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, watched with amusement. Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady despite her anger. We came here in good faith. We followed every law, every regulation. We built New Terra with our own hands, our own resources. 3 million people call it home. You cannot simply take it because you decided you want it. The Valoran representative finally spoke. Eternal Wisdom was the oldest being in the chamber, ancient beyond human comprehension. His species had been exploring the stars when humans were still living in caves. When he spoke, his voice was soft but somehow more threatening than Thorax's roar. Child species, Eternal Wisdom said, addressing Lisa as if she were a small girl rather than a decorated diplomat. You do not understand how the galaxy works. The strong decide. The weak accept. This has been our way for 10,000 years. Your protests are amusing but ultimately meaningless. Kyle had reached his limit. 5 years of insults. 5 years of watching his people be treated like children. 5 years of bowing and scraping to beings who refused to see humans as equals. Something inside him snapped. We're done here, Kyle said. His voice was quiet, but something in his tone made the laughter stop. Lisa, Ryan, we're leaving. Crystalline Mind's form pulsed with what might have been confusion. You cannot simply leave. The council has not dismissed you. Kyle turned his back on the council, an insult in galactic protocol. Watch us. As they walked toward the exit, Thorax called out, You will vacate New Terra, human. If you do not, we will remove you by force. Kyle stopped at the doorway. He looked back at the assembled aliens, these ancient species who thought themselves superior simply because they were old. You're welcome to try. The doors closed behind them. In the hallway, Lisa let out a breath she had been holding. Kyle, do you realize what you just did? You essentially declared that we won't back down. Good, Kyle said, because we won't. Ryan, who had been silent throughout the meeting, nodded slowly. They'll see this as a challenge. The Xanthari will send their fleet to New Terra. They'll expect us to run. Then they'll be disappointed, Kyle replied. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Kyle spent most of that time in his quarters thinking about what came next. He had not made this decision lightly. He knew that standing up to the elder races meant war. He knew that humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and inexperienced in galactic warfare. But he also knew that if humans backed down now, they would spend the rest of their existence as second-class citizens in a galaxy that would never respect them. When their ship reached Earth, Kyle went directly to the presidential complex in Geneva. President Nathan Cross was waiting for him, along with Fleet Admiral Helen Rodriguez. Helen was a stocky woman with short dark hair and the bearing of someone who had spent her life in military service. "I saw the recording from the council meeting," Nathan said as Kyle entered. The president was a former soldier himself, and Kyle could see the anger in his eyes. "They're really going to take New Terra?" "They're going to try," Kyle confirmed. He laid out the situation clearly. "The Zenthari will send a fleet, probably within 2 weeks. They'll expect us to evacuate. When we don't, they'll attack. That's when this becomes a shooting war." Helen pulled up a holographic display of human military assets. "We have 47 warships in active service. Intelligence suggests the Zenthari will send at least 50. We're outmatched." "In numbers, yes," Kyle agreed. "But they're arrogant. They think we're primitives who got lucky with faster-than-light travel. They don't take us seriously. That's an advantage we can use." Nathan walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "If we fight, we lose people. Ships, crews, maybe whole colonies. If we back down, we lose our dignity and our future. Every decision after this will be made for us by aliens who think we're beneath them." He turned back to Kyle and Helen. "I won't ask our people to die for nothing, but I also won't accept slavery disguised as protection by superior species. Kyle, you've been dealing with these aliens for 5 years. What do you think we should do?" Kyle had thought about this question for 3 days straight. "I think we fight, not because we want war, but because the galaxy needs to learn that humanity will not be pushed around. We're from Earth, a death world by their standards. We survived and thrived on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We didn't do that by being weak or accepting our fate. We did it by fighting for every inch of ground, every day of survival." Helen nodded slowly. "If we're doing this, we need to mobilize now. Every ship, every weapon, every advantage we can create." Nathan made the decision that would change human history. "Admiral Rodriguez, you are authorized to mobilize the fleet. Admiral Hudson, you'll command our forces at New Terra. Show these elder races what happens when they underestimate a species from a death world." Orders went out within the hour. Across Earth and every human colony, the call went forth: mobilize, prepare. War was coming. Not a war humanity wanted, but a war that had become necessary. In orbital shipyards above Earth, Mars, and a dozen other worlds, ships that had been designed for exploration and defense were retrofitted for war. Crews reported for duty, many of them nervous but determined. They understood what was at stake. This was not just about one colony. This was about whether humanity would be free or forever subservient to alien empires. Kyle stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UNS Resolution, and watched Earth grow smaller as they departed for New Terra. Behind him, the human fleet followed. 47 warships against an empire that had ruled space for millennia. The odds were terrible. But Kyle Hudson had not come this far to surrender. The elder races thought humans were weak. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. Humanity was done with alien arrogance, and if that meant war, then war it would be. The orbital shipyard above Earth buzzed with activity that never stopped. Welding torches sent sparks flying in the vacuum of space, while massive cargo haulers moved weapons and supplies between docking bays. Captain Jack Morrison stood on an observation deck watching crews work on his ship, the UNS Defiance. The ship was humanity's newest warship, and in 2 weeks it would face combat against an enemy that had been building warships for thousands of years. Jack was a muscular man in his early 40s with a scar across his left cheek from an accident during Mars colony construction. He had commanded cargo haulers and exploration vessels, but never a warship. Now he was being asked to fight a war against impossible odds. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt ready. A woman in engineering coveralls approached. Chief Engineer Maya Torres was small but tough, with grease-stained hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent the last week retrofitting the Defiance for combat, and she looked exhausted but satisfied. "She's ready," Maya announced. "Or as ready as we can make her in 2 weeks." Jack studied his ship through the window. The Defiance looked sleek and modern, but compared to the massive alien warships he had seen in intelligence reports, it seemed small and fragile. "What are our chances, Maya?" "Honestly," Maya considered the question carefully, "alien ships rely on energy shields and massive weapons. They're built on the assumption that bigger and stronger always wins. Our ships are different. We designed them based on Earth's history of naval warfare. Redundant systems, damage control, adaptability. An alien ship loses its main reactor and it's dead in space. The Defiance can lose half her systems and still fight. That's comforting, Jack said dryly, assuming we only lose half our systems. It's better than what they expect, Maya replied. They think we'll panic and run. They've never fought someone who refuses to quit. Across the shipyard, Colonel Danny Wright was putting fighter pilots through simulations that would have been considered impossible a month ago. Danny was a former test pilot with a reputation for pulling off maneuvers that broke every safety regulation. Now he was teaching those same dangerous tricks to young pilots who would need every advantage to survive. In the simulation pod, a pilot named Lieutenant Kevin Chen was sweating despite the climate control. His screen showed 3 Xanthari fighters closing in on him, their weapons charging. Standard doctrine said to break off and evade. Danny had taught him something different. Kevin accelerated directly toward the enemy fighters. The alien pilots, following their predictable attack patterns, tried to adjust their formation. But Kevin had already anticipated their moves. He rolled his fighter 90 degrees and fired a burst that caught the lead alien ship. Before the other 2 could react, he had spun behind them and eliminated both with quick, precise shots. The simulation ended. Danny's voice came through the speakers. Good, you're learning. Aliens fight by the rules they've used for thousands of years. They form up, they advance in formation, they follow doctrine. You know what we call that on Earth? Predictable. And predictable enemies are dead enemies. Kevin climbed out of the pod, his legs shaky from adrenaline. Colonel, what if they adapt? What if they change their tactics? Danny smiled grimly. Then we adapt faster. That's what humans do best. Our history is full of underdogs who won because they refused to fight the way the enemy expected. We're going to do the same thing to these aliens. In a secure facility deep beneath Geneva, Dr. Alex Chen worked on weapons that would make even the elder races nervous. Alex was a thin man with messy hair and a mind that never stopped analyzing problems. The Galactic Council had mocked human technology as primitive, but Alex knew something they didn't. Human technology might be newer, but it was also more creative. His assistant, Dr. Rebecca Santos, held up a small cylinder that looked harmless. The kinetic missiles are ready for field testing. They're simple, really. Just dense metal projectiles accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens use energy shields, Alex explained to the visiting Admiral Helen Rodriguez. Those shields are designed to disperse energy weapons. They're very effective against lasers and plasma. But a solid object? Moving at relativistic speeds? Their shields won't even slow it down. It'll punch right through. Helen examined the missile carefully. How many can we produce? Thousands, Alex replied. The beauty of kinetic weapons is that they're cheap and simple. No complex energy systems, no exotic materials. Just math, physics, and a lot of momentum. Rebecca brought up another display. We've also developed electronic warfare systems. Alien computer networks are sophisticated, but they're also standardized across their entire fleet. They've been using the same basic architecture for centuries. We can disrupt their communications, scramble their targeting systems, even shut down their engines if we get close enough. Will it work? Helen asked. Alex shrugged. We won't know until we try. But the aliens have never faced an enemy that fights the way we do. They expect honor, formation battles, strength against strength. We're going to give them chaos, adaptation, and creativity. That's worth more than 1,000 warships. On the far side of Earth's moon, Captain Sophie Blake prepared her ship for a mission that could determine the outcome of the coming war. Sophie commanded the UNS Shadow, a stealth reconnaissance vessel that used experimental technology to avoid detection. She was a quiet woman with patience that bordered on supernatural, perfect for the waiting game that stealth operations required. Her crew was hand-picked, specialists in electronic warfare, sensor analysis, and silent operations. Their mission was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. They would infiltrate alien space, map enemy fleet positions, and identify weaknesses. If they were caught, they would be alone deep in enemy territory with no hope of rescue. Sophie addressed her crew in the Shadow's small briefing room. The Xanthari don't know we're coming. They don't even know our stealth technology exists. That gives us one chance to gather intelligence before they realize humans can hide from their sensors. We make this count. Her sensor officer, Lieutenant Paul Grant, brought up a map of Xanthari space. Intelligence suggests their fleet is gathering here, at their forward staging base. If we can confirm their numbers and formation, Admiral Hudson can plan accordingly. And if we're detected? Asked the weapons officer, Lieutenant Amy Ross. Sophie's answer was blunt. Then we run. The shadow is fast and small. We use that advantage. But if we're cornered, she didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what happened to human prisoners in alien hands. The elder races didn't consider humans worthy of their usual treatment of enemy combatants. Back on Earth, Admiral Kyle Hudson met with his senior officers in a secure command center. The holographic display showed the new Terra system, where the coming battle would take place. Kyle knew that defending a fixed position against a superior force was nearly impossible. So he didn't plan to defend. He planned to attack. The Zenthari will expect us to form a defensive line around New Terra, Kyle explained. They'll advance in their traditional formation, confident in their numbers and firepower. We won't be there. Instead, we'll position our ships scattered throughout the system, using asteroids and the planet's moons for cover. Commander Ryan Clark, his chief strategist, highlighted several positions on the map. When they advance, they'll have to spread out to search for us. That breaks their formation. Once they're dispersed, we strike from multiple angles. We're not trying to destroy their whole fleet. We're trying to damage enough ships to make them reconsider the cost of this attack. Captain Jack Morrison studied the plan. It's risky. If they don't take the bait and stay in formation, we'll be forced to attack them head-on. That's a fight we'll lose. That's why we need to make them overconfident, Kyle said. We leak intelligence suggesting we only have 30 ships instead of 47. We make them think we're scared. Their arrogance is our best weapon. Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet prepared. Ships were loaded with weapons and supplies. Crews drilled on damage control and combat procedures. Families said goodbye to loved ones, not knowing if they would ever see each other again. The mood was tense but determined. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they were pushing back. Lisa Morgan, the diplomat who had stood beside Kyle at the Galactic Council, now worked on a different kind of preparation. She reached out quietly to smaller alien species, those who had also suffered under the elder race's arrogance. She didn't ask for military support, but she planted seeds. Seeds of doubt about whether the old order really was the best order. Seeds of hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could be different. As the deadline approached, Kyle stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolution and watched his fleet assemble. 47 warships, thousands of crew members, and one simple message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be conquered. Not today, not ever. The aliens had pushed for war. Now they would get it. The Zenthari fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Terra system, like a swarm of crystalline locusts. 50 warships, each one massive and gleaming, arranged themselves in a perfect wedge formation that had struck fear into enemies for 3,000 years. Commander Crystalsong, leading the fleet from his flagship, felt satisfied. The humans would see this display of power and understand their mistake in defying the Galactic Council. Scan for human vessels, Crystalsong ordered. His crystalline form pulsed with confident colors. They should be clustered around their colony world, preparing for evacuation. The sensor officer made a sound of confusion. Commander, we are detecting 13 human warships in orbit of New Terra. They are not moving. They appear to be waiting. Crystalsong's colors shifted to amusement. 13 ships against 50. The humans are even more foolish than I believed. Open a communication channel. On the bridge of the UNS Defiance, Captain Jack Morrison watched the alien fleet approach. His hands were steady despite his racing heart. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with grim determination. They all knew the odds. They were here anyway. Incoming transmission from the Zenthari flagship, the communications officer reported. Put it on screen, Jack ordered. Crystalsong's alien face appeared on the display. The translation software turned his crystalline chimes into words. Human vessel, this is Commander Crystalsong of the Zenthari Collective. You are ordered to surrender immediately and evacuate the system. Resistance is futile. Jack leaned back in his chair and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Commander Crystalsong, this is Captain Jack Morrison of the United Nations ship Defiance. Your order is denied. This is human territory. If you want it, you'll have to take it from us. Crystalsong's colors flickered with what might have been surprise, then shifted to patterns that suggested laughter. You amuse me, human. But amusement ends now. All ships, advance formation. We will sweep these insects from our path. The Zenthari fleet began moving forward in their perfect wedge, maintaining strict formation. It was beautiful in a way. Precise and powerful, the product of thousands of years of military tradition. It was also exactly what Jack had hoped they would do. All ships execute scatter pattern Delta, Jack ordered on the fleet-wide channel. Make it look panicked. The 13 human ships suddenly broke formation and fled in different directions. From the Zenthari perspective, it looked like the humans had lost their nerve and were running in fear. Crystal Song's colors pulsed with satisfaction. They flee as expected, Crystal Song announced. All ships break formation and pursue. Destroy them. This was the Zenthari's first mistake. The perfect wedge formation broke apart as 50 warships spread out across the system, each one chasing a human vessel. The Zenthari commanders were confident. Their ships were individually more powerful than anything the humans had. Catching and destroying the fleeing vessels would be simple. What they didn't know was that 34 more human warships were hiding throughout the system. Behind asteroids, in the shadow of moons, using every piece of cover available, and they were all waiting for Admiral Kyle Hudson's signal. On the UNS Resolution, hidden behind New Terra's largest moon, Kyle watched the tactical display as the Zenthari ships spread across the system like fingers reaching out to grab prey. He waited until the enemy formation was completely dispersed. Then he gave the order, all ships execute ambush protocol. Fire at will. The human fleet struck from every direction at once. Ships that the Zenthari thought were fleeing suddenly reversed course and opened fire. Hidden vessels emerged from behind asteroids and moons, targeting the now isolated Zenthari warships. The organized advance became chaos in seconds. Jack Morrison's Defiance led the counterattack. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Susan Park, had already locked onto the Zenthari flagship. Firing kinetic missiles, she announced calmly. 6 solid metal projectiles, each weighing several tons and moving at a significant fraction of light speed, lanced toward Crystal Song's ship. The Zenthari's energy shields, designed to disperse laser and plasma fire, activated automatically. The shields did nothing. The kinetic missiles punched through as if the shields weren't even there. 3 of the 6 missiles struck the flagship. The impacts shattered the crystalline hull, sending fractures racing through the entire structure. Crystal Song's bridge erupted in alarms as systems failed across the ship. His colors shifted to patterns of shock and disbelief. Impossible, Crystal Song transmitted. Our shields, they should have stopped. Your shields stop energy weapons, Jack replied. Those weren't energy weapons. Welcome to human innovation. Across the system, the same scene repeated. Zenthari ships found their shields useless against human kinetic weapons. Their powerful energy cannons struggled to track small, fast-moving human ships that refused to fight in formation. When Zenthari vessels tried to coordinate their response, electronic warfare systems developed by Dr. Alex Chen scrambled their communications. Colonel Danny Wright led his fighter squadrons into the chaos with savage precision. His pilots flew in patterns that made no sense to Zenthari tactical computers. They appeared from unexpected angles, struck fast, and vanished before the enemy could respond. The aliens had superior weapons and stronger ships, but they had never faced enemies that fought like humans. Delta Squadron, target their engine clusters, Danny ordered. His own fighter rolled through a gap between 2 Zenthari ships, firing as he went. We don't need to destroy them, just cripple them. His pilots followed his example. They targeted engines, weapon systems, sensor arrays, anything that would disable a ship without necessarily destroying it. The goal was not just to win this battle, but to send a message. Humanity could hurt you. Humanity could defeat you, and humanity would not be intimidated. The Zenthari tried to regroup. Ship captains broadcast orders to reform the wedge formation, but human electronic warfare kept disrupting their communications. Every time a group of Zenthari ships started to coordinate, human vessels would strike from a new direction, forcing them to break apart again. Captain Sophie Blake's stealth ship, the UNS Shadow, drifted unseen through the chaos. Her crew had been watching the battle unfold, waiting for their moment. When 3 Zenthari supply ships tried to retreat to the edge of the system, Sophie struck. Target the lead supply vessel, Sophie ordered quietly. Missiles away. The supply ships never saw the attack coming. One moment they were fleeing. The next, their lead ship exploded in a ball of flame and debris. The other 2 supply vessels scattered, but Shadow pursued like a ghost, eliminating them both before they could escape to faster-than-light speed. Without supplies, the Xanthari fleet was in serious trouble. Ships that had taken damage couldn't repair, vessels running low on energy couldn't refuel, and the human attack showed no signs of stopping. After 6 hours of combat, Commander Crystalsong made a decision that would have been unthinkable when the battle started. His flagship was crippled, 15 of his ships were destroyed, and at least 20 more were damaged. The humans had lost no ships. Several were damaged, but they kept fighting with a determination that bordered on insane. All vessels, Crystalsong transmitted on emergency channels, retreat to Rally Point Zenith 4. Withdraw immediately. The Xanthari fleet fled. The mighty force that had entered the system with such confidence now ran for their lives, pursued by human fighters that harassed them all the way to the system's edge. Only when the last Xanthari ship jumped to faster-than-light speed did the human fleet finally cease fire. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jack Morrison let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His ship had taken hits, but the damage control teams had kept her fighting. Around him, his crew was cheering, hugging each other, and crying tears of relief and triumph. "Status report," Jack ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Lieutenant Susan Park checked her displays. 5 ships reporting moderate damage. 0 ships destroyed. 0 deaths. 43 wounded, mostly minor. Jack couldn't believe it. They had faced 50 enemy warships and won without losing a single vessel. "Confirm that." 0 ships destroyed. "Confirmed, sir." The Defiance took hits, but Chief Torres kept our systems running. "It's the same story across the fleet." Maya Torres's voice came over the internal comm. "Told you, Captain." Redundant systems and good damage control. These ships were built to take punishment. Admiral Kyle Hudson's face appeared on the main display. He looked tired but satisfied. "All ships, well done. Captain Morrison, your performance was exemplary. Maintain position around New Terra and begin repairs. The Xanthari will report this defeat to the Galactic Council. Things are about to get very interesting." As the human fleet began assessing damage and treating wounded, news of the battle was already spreading across the galaxy. The mighty Xanthari collective had been defeated by a species barely a century into space travel. The elder races had believed humans were primitive newcomers who would be easily controlled. They had just learned otherwise. The question now was what they would do about it. The Korvax Empire did not believe the reports at first. Surely the Xanthari had exaggerated their defeat. A species as primitive as humanity could not possibly have defeated 50 warships. But when War Master Thorax reviewed the battle recordings, he saw the truth with his own 4 eyes. The humans had not just won, they had dominated. Thorax slammed his massive fists on the war table, cracking the stone surface. "Impossible. The Xanthari are fools, but they are not weak. How did these primitives accomplish this?" His tactical advisor, a smaller Korvax named Battle Seeker, replayed key moments of the battle. "They used unconventional tactics, War Master. They scattered when we would have held formation. They struck from unexpected angles, and their weapons ignored Xanthari shielding. Then we adapt," Thorax growled. "Assemble the Grand Fleet, 100 warships. We will crush Earth itself and end this rebellion before it spreads." Battle Seeker hesitated. "War Master, perhaps we should reconsider. If we attack Earth and fail—" "We will not fail," Thorax interrupted. "The Xanthari were overconfident. We will not make that mistake. We will hit them with overwhelming force. No tricks, no tactics can overcome simple numbers." The Korvax Grand Fleet began gathering at their forward bases. 100 of their most powerful warships prepared for the journey to Earth. The message was clear. Humanity had won one battle through luck and deception, but against the full might of the Korvax Empire, they would be swept away. On Earth, Admiral Kyle Hudson received the intelligence reports and immediately saw the problem. If the Korvax reached Earth with that many ships, even the best tactics might not save humanity. The fleet needed time to prepare, and civilians needed to be evacuated from vulnerable colonies. But time was the one thing they didn't have. "We can't let them reach Earth," Kyle said to his command staff. President Nathan Cross attended the meeting via secure video link. "If we try to defend Earth against 100 ships, we'll lose." Commander Ryan Clark studied the strategic map. "Then we don't defend Earth. We attack them before they get here." Everyone turned to look at him. President Nathan Cross leaned forward on his screen. "Explain." "The Korvax are gathering their fleet," Ryan continued. That means pulling ships from patrol routes and defensive positions. Their supply lines are stretched. Their industrial worlds are less protected than usual. We strike at their ability to make war while their fleet is away from home. Admiral Helen Rodriguez, overseeing Earth's defense, nodded slowly. It's risky. If we commit our fleet to offensive operations and the Korvax somehow slip past us, then Earth falls, Kyle finished. But if we sit here and wait for them to come to us, Earth falls anyway. At least this way, we control the battlefield. Nathan Cross made the decision. Do it, hit them where it hurts. Make them regret starting this war. Captain Jack Morrison received his orders with a mixture of excitement and dread. The Defiance had just finished repairs from the battle at New Terra. Now he was being asked to take his ship deep into enemy territory and attack Korvax industrial worlds. It was the kind of mission that usually ended with everyone dead. 3 targets, Jack told his senior officers in the briefing room. Korvax shipyards on Thorin 5, Vexel, and Korath. We hit all 3 within a 48-hour period. We destroy their ability to build ships, then we run before their fleet can respond. Chief Engineer Maya Torres looked at the star charts. Thorin 5 is defended. Maybe not heavily with their fleet mobilized, but there will be defense platforms and patrol ships. That's why we're not going alone, Jack replied. He brought up the fleet assignments. We'll have support from 5 other ships. Fast strike, maximum damage, get out clean. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Susan Park, studied the target information. The shipyards are huge. How do we destroy them quickly enough to escape? Jack smiled grimly. Dr. Chen has provided us with something special. Kinetic missiles with delayed detonation. We fire them into the shipyards, they punch through the structure, then they explode from the inside. Maximum damage with minimum time on target. Meanwhile, Dr. Alex Chen was deploying his newest creation, hundreds of small drone ships, each one barely larger than a fighter but controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. The drones were cheap to build and could be produced quickly. More importantly, they fought in ways that made Korvax tactical computers crash trying to track them. The beauty of AI warfare, Alex explained to Admiral Helen Rodriguez, is that our computers don't care about honor or glory. They don't get scared or angry. They just calculate the most efficient way to destroy the enemy and execute it perfectly. Helen watched a simulation of drone swarms engaging Korvax warships. The drones moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually carefully coordinated. They swarmed the target from multiple angles, overwhelming its defenses through sheer numbers. How many can we produce? Currently, about 20 per day per facility, Alex replied. We have 3 facilities running full-time. In a week, we'll have over 400 drones ready for deployment. Make it happen, Helen ordered. If the Korvax fleet reaches Earth, I want an army of angry robots waiting for them. Captain Sophie Blake's stealth ship, the UNS Shadow, was already in Korvax space, gathering intelligence. What she found both encouraged and worried her. The Korvax had indeed pulled ships from all over their empire to form their grand fleet. But they had left their industrial world surprisingly well defended. They learned from the Xanthari's mistake, Sophie told her sensor officer, Lieutenant Paul Grant. They're not leaving their supply lines unprotected. Can we still complete the mission? Paul asked. Sophie studied the sensor data carefully. Yes, but it's going to be harder than planned. Pass this information to Admiral Hudson. He needs to know what we're facing. The human fleet struck 3 days later. 6 ships led by the UNS Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thorin 5 system. The Korvax defense platforms immediately began broadcasting warnings and powering up weapons. Jack ignored the warnings. All ships attack formation beta. Weapons free. Let's make this quick. The human ships accelerated toward the massive orbital shipyards that hung above Thorin 5. Korvax defense platforms opened fire, but human electronic warfare systems scrambled their targeting. Most of the shots went wide. Those that didn't were absorbed by the human ship's armor, designed to take punishment and keep fighting. Kinetic missiles away, Lieutenant Susan Park announced. Dozens of solid metal projectiles launched from the Defiance and her sister ships, racing toward the shipyards at incredible speeds. The Korvax shields activated, but like the Xanthari before them, they learned that energy shields were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The missiles punched through the shipyard structures and embedded themselves deep inside. Then they detonated. The shipyards on Thorin 5 had been building warships for the Korvax Empire for 200 years. In less than 5 minutes, they ceased to exist. Massive explosions tore through the orbital structures, sending debris spinning into space. Half-completed warships broke apart and fell toward the planet below. Target destroyed, Susan reported. Multiple secondary explosions. The shipyards are gone. Set course for Vexel, Jack ordered. We're not done yet. Over the next 2 days, the human strike force hit all 3 target shipyards. Each attack was quick and devastating. The Korvax lost centuries of industrial capability in 48 hours. More importantly, they lost the ability to replace ships damaged in combat. War Master Thorax received the reports with mounting rage. They dare attack our industrial worlds? This is unacceptable. All ships change course. We go to Thorin 5 and hunt down these human raiders. Battleseeker tried to interject. War Master, if we divert now, we will not reach Earth for— I do not care, Thorax roared. The humans have insulted us. They will pay. This was humanity's second victory, and they hadn't even fired a shot at the main Korvax fleet. By forcing Thorax to divert his ships to defend their industrial worlds, the human strike force had bought Earth precious time to prepare. But the Korvax fleet was still coming, and now they were angry. When they finally reached Earth, they would be looking for revenge. Admiral Kyle Hudson knew this. He also knew that an angry enemy makes mistakes. Colonel Danny Wright prepared his fighter pilots for the coming battle. The Korvax are big, tough, and powerful. They're also predictable. They fight with emotion, especially when they're angry. We're going to use that against them. The stage was set. The Korvax Grand Fleet, reduced from 100 to 90 ships by the need to protect their remaining industrial worlds, was heading toward Earth, and humanity was ready to show them that attacking a Deathworld species on their home ground was a very bad idea. The Velaran Dominion watched the war unfold from their ancient capital world with growing concern. Eternal Wisdom, leader of the Valorans, had lived for over 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, had watched countless species challenge the old order and fail, but humanity was different. They were winning. The Zenthari were arrogant, Eternal Wisdom said to his council. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but everyone who heard it felt a chill. The Korvax are emotional. These are weaknesses. We will not make the same mistakes. His chief military commander, Strategic Necessity, projected holographic recordings of human battles. The humans use deception, speed, and unconventional tactics. Their technology is less advanced, but they apply it creatively. They adapt faster than we anticipated. Then we must adapt faster still, Eternal Wisdom replied. He studied the recordings carefully, paying attention to every detail. Unlike the other elder races, he did not dismiss human capabilities. He analyzed them. Prepare our fleet, but do not engage the humans directly. Instead, we will strike at their colonies. Force them to spread their forces thin. An enemy that defends everything effectively defends nothing. The Valoran strategy was elegant and ruthless. While humanity focused on defending Earth and fighting the Korvax, Velaran ships began appearing at isolated human colonies. They would arrive, demand surrender, and if refused, they would bombard the colony from orbit. No ground invasion, no occupation, just destruction. Admiral Kyle Hudson received the first reports with growing dread. 3 colonies had been hit in 2 days, thousands of civilians dead. The colonists had tried to evacuate, but Valoran ships were fast and their weapons were precise. They're not trying to conquer us, Commander Ryan Clark said, studying the pattern of attacks. They're trying to break our will. Make us choose between defending Earth and protecting our colonies. Lisa Morgan, who had returned to military service as an advisor, added her perspective. It's psychological warfare. They want us to feel helpless. Every colony we lose, they demonstrate that our victory at New Terra was meaningless. Kyle slammed his fist on the table. We can't let them keep doing this. We need to split our forces. That's what they want, Ryan warned. If we split up, they can defeat us in detail. Pick off our ships one by one. Admiral Helen Rodriguez had a different idea. We don't split our main fleet, but we do start thinking bigger than just military solutions. Not all aliens support the elder races. Some species have suffered under Velaran rule for centuries. What if we gave them a reason to rebel? The idea took root quickly. Lisa Morgan began reaching out through back channels to species under Velaran control. The message was simple. Humanity was proving that the elder races could be beaten. If subject species rose up now while the Velarans were distracted, they might win their freedom. Captain Sophie Blake's stealth ship received new orders. Instead of gathering intelligence on enemy fleets, Shadow would infiltrate Valoran-controlled worlds and make contact with resistance movements. It was dangerous work, but Sophie had proven she could move unseen through enemy territory. The world of Naxos was home to the Draven, a humanoid species with blue skin and 4 arms. They had been conquered by the Valorans 800 years ago. Generations of Draven had lived under foreign rule, paying tribute and watching their resources exploited. But in secret, a resistance movement had survived, waiting for an opportunity. Captain Maya Torres volunteered to lead the contact mission. She had finished her work on the Defiance and was looking for a new challenge. When Sophie's ship arrived in orbit of Naxos, Maya took a small team down to the surface in a cloaked shuttle. The meeting took place in an abandoned mine deep underground. The Draven resistance leader, a scarred warrior named Crix, met them with weapons drawn. His people didn't trust easily, especially not aliens who claimed they wanted to help. "Why should we believe you?" Crix demanded. His forearms held weapons pointed at Maya and her team. "The Valorans have ruled us for centuries. What can humans possibly do?" Maya remained calm. "We beat the Zenthari in open combat. We've been raiding Korvac's industrial worlds. The elder races aren't invincible. They're just old and arrogant. You want freedom? We can show you how to take it." "Words," Crix spat. "Easy to say from safety. You don't know what Valoran punishment means." Maya pulled up a display showing footage from human colonies destroyed by Valoran attacks. 3 of our colonies were wiped out last week. Thousands of our people died. We know exactly what Valoran punishment means. The difference is we're fighting back, and we're winning. Something in Crix's expression changed. He lowered his weapons. "What do you propose?" "We teach you what we know," Maya replied. "Guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, how to turn your weaknesses into advantages. The Valorans have powerful ships and advanced technology, but they can't be everywhere at once, and they've never faced an enemy that refuses to fight fair." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya and her team trained the Draven resistance. They taught them how to sabotage infrastructure without being caught, how to strike fast and disappear, how to make the occupiers afraid to leave their fortified positions. Most importantly, they taught them that victory didn't require defeating the enemy in open battle. It required making occupation too expensive to maintain. The rebellion on Naxos began with small acts of sabotage. Power stations failed. Supply convoys disappeared. Communication arrays went offline. The Valoran garrison commander initially dismissed it as random malfunctions. By the time he realized it was coordinated resistance, half his troops were too nervous to patrol outside their base. Eternal Wisdom received the reports from Naxos with concern. One world in rebellion was manageable, but if the humans were helping coordinate resistance across multiple worlds, the entire Valoran subject system could collapse. He was forced to divert ships from offensive operations to garrison duty. Ships that should have been attacking human colonies were instead trying to suppress rebellions. Admiral Kyle Hudson saw the strategy working and pushed harder. "We can't match the Valorans in a straight fight, but we can make their empire ungovernable. Every world they have to suppress is one less fleet they can send against us." The main human fleet prepared for a major engagement. Intelligence from Sophie Blake's reconnaissance missions showed that the Valorans were gathering a substantial force at the Cascade Nebula, a region of space known for its radiation and sensor interference. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Captain Jack Morrison studied the tactical information carefully. "They're trying to do to us what we did to the Zenthari, lure us into an ambush." "Probably," Kyle agreed, "but we know it's a trap. The question is, can we spring it and survive?" Commander Ryan Clark highlighted key positions in the nebula. "Sophie's people have been mapping it for weeks. We know where the Valorans are hiding. If we can divide our fleet into 3 groups and coordinate our approach, we turn their ambush into a counter-ambush," Kyle finished. "It's risky." "Everything we've done has been risky," Jack pointed out. "But it's worked so far." Kyle made the decision. "We go in 3 groups, frontal assault to draw their attention, flanking maneuvers from both sides once they commit, and we use the nebula's radiation to our advantage. Their sensors are better than ours in normal space, but in that soup we're all equally blind." Colonel Danny Wright prepared his fighter squadrons for what would be their most challenging mission yet. "The nebula's radiation will scramble our instruments," he told his pilots. "You'll be flying on manual, trusting your instincts more than your computers. It's going to be chaos, but chaos is where we thrive." As the human fleet moved toward the Cascade Nebula, every crew member knew this battle would determine humanity's future. The Valorans were the strongest of the elder races, the most dangerous enemy humanity had faced. If the humans won this battle, the entire galaxy would have to accept them as equals. If they lost, humanity might not survive. Eternal Wisdom watched the approaching human fleet from his flagship and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. The humans were not behaving like desperate prey. They were moving with purpose and confidence. They believed they could win. Perhaps, Eternal Wisdom mused quietly, we underestimated how dangerous a cornered Deathworld species could be. He gave his orders. All ships prepare for combat. Show these humans why the Velaran Dominion has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. The stage was set for the largest space battle humanity had ever fought. In the swirling chaos of the Cascade Nebula, two fleets would clash, and the outcome would reshape galactic politics forever. The Cascade Nebula was a nightmare of swirling radiation, an ionized gas that stretched across 3 light-years. Sensors couldn't penetrate more than a few thousand kilometers through the interference. Communication was difficult. Navigation was treacherous. It was the perfect place for an ambush, which was exactly why the Valorans had chosen it. Admiral Kyle Hudson stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolution as his ship entered the nebula. The view screen showed nothing but purple and red clouds that twisted like living things. Every alarm was screaming about radiation levels. His crew worked calmly despite the chaos, trusting their training and their commander. All ships, this is Hudson. Execute Plan Trident. Group 1 with me for frontal approach. Morrison, take Group 2 wide to starboard. Rodriguez, Group 3 to port. We meet in the middle and crush whatever's waiting for us. Captain Jack Morrison acknowledged from the Defiance. Group 2 acknowledging. We'll be ready. Admiral Helen Rodriguez, commanding from the battleship UNS Valiant, confirmed as well. Group 3 on approach. See you on the other side, Kyle. The human fleet split into 3 groups and disappeared into the nebula from different angles. On the Valoran flagship, Eternal Wisdom watched his sensors carefully. The radiation made it difficult to track the human ships, but he knew they were coming. They are approaching in 3 groups, Strategic Necessity reported. The main force is coming directly toward our position. The other 2 groups appear to be attempting flanking maneuvers. Eternal Wisdom nodded slowly. The humans are predictable after all. They use the same tactics repeatedly. When they arrive, we will destroy them. He paused. But prepare secondary defensive positions. These humans have surprised us before. I will not underestimate them again. This caution saved the Valoran fleet from complete disaster, but it wouldn't save them from defeat. Captain Sophie Blake's stealth ship, the UNS Shadow, had spent 3 weeks mapping every cubic meter of the Cascade Nebula. Her crew had marked safe passages, identified regions of deadly radiation, and plotted courses that sensors couldn't detect. That information had been shared with every human ship in the fleet. The Valorans knew the nebula was difficult to navigate. What they didn't know was that humans had already mastered it. They thought the nebula would slow human forces and make coordination impossible. Instead, it became humanity's greatest advantage. Kyle's Group 1 emerged from a dense radiation cloud directly in front of the Valoran defensive line. 40 Velaran warships powered up their weapons, ready to eliminate the human attackers. Kyle did exactly what they expected. He ordered his ships into combat formation and advanced. All ships open fire, Kyle commanded. Make it look good. The UNS Resolution and the 15 ships with her unleashed a barrage of missiles and kinetic weapons. The Valorans returned fire with devastating energy beams that had destroyed countless enemies over thousands of years. Several human ships took hits, their armor scarring but holding. The Valorans pressed their advantage, moving forward to finish off what they thought was the main human force. Eternal Wisdom watched the battle from his flagship with satisfaction. The humans fight bravely, but they are outmatched. All ships advance. Destroy them. The Valoran line pushed forward, focusing all their attention on Kyle's group. This was exactly what he wanted. With the Valorans committed to the frontal assault, their flanks were exposed. Jack Morrison's Group 2 emerged from a radiation storm on the Valoran right flank. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Susan Park, already had targeting solutions locked, firing kinetic missiles. Multiple targets. The Defiance and her sister ships opened fire on the unsuspecting Valoran right wing. 8 Valoran warships took direct hits before they could react. Their shields absorbed some damage, but kinetic weapons didn't care about energy barriers. Metal traveling at relativistic speeds punched through shields, hulls, and internal systems with equal efficiency. Flanking attack starboard side, strategic necessity reported urgently. We're taking heavy damage. Before the Valorans could respond, Admiral Helen Rodriguez's Group 3 appeared on their left flank. 20 human warships struck from the opposite direction, catching the Valorans in a perfect crossfire. All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels, Helen ordered. Her tactical officer had identified which ships were coordinating Valoran movements. If they could disrupt enemy command structure, the battle would turn into chaos. The Valorans tried to reform their defensive line, but the nebula's radiation made communication difficult. Ship captains couldn't coordinate properly. Some tried to turn to face Jack's group. Others focused on Helen's ships, and still others continued engaging Kyle's frontal force. The perfect Valoran formation dissolved into confused individual battles. Colonel Danny Wright saw his opportunity and took it. His fighter squadrons had been waiting in the densest radiation zones, places where even fighters struggled to survive. Now they emerged like vengeful ghosts, hundreds of small craft swarming the confused Valoran capital ships. All fighters weapons free, Danny transmitted. Hit them where it hurts. The Valoran ships were designed to fight other capital ships. Their weapons were powerful but slow to track. Danny's pilots flew patterns that made tracking impossible. They strafed sensor arrays, destroyed communication antennae, and targeted engine clusters. Individual fighters couldn't destroy a Valoran warship, but hundreds of them could cripple one. Dr. Alex Chen's AI-controlled drones joined the attack. The small automated ships didn't have human creativity, but they had perfect coordination and no fear. They swarmed Valoran vessels in patterns that overloaded enemy targeting computers. The Valorans would destroy 10 drones 20-50, but more kept coming. It was death by 1,000 cuts. On the Valoran flagship, Eternal Wisdom finally understood what was happening. The humans hadn't walked into an ambush. They had created one. The nebula wasn't hindering them. It was helping them. Every tactical advantage the Valorans had relied on was being turned against them. All ships retreat to secondary positions, Eternal Wisdom ordered. His voice remained calm, but strategic necessity could detect the underlying tension. The ancient leader had never ordered a retreat before, but retreating in the nebula was harder than advancing. Ships that tried to withdraw found their paths blocked by radiation storms that hadn't been there minutes before. The nebula was always changing, and the humans knew its patterns better. Valoran vessels that broke formation to escape were picked off by waiting human ships. The Battle of Cascade Nebula raged for 6 hours. The Valorans fought with desperate skill, but they were outmaneuvered and outthought. When the radiation finally began to clear, revealing the full scope of the battlefield, the results were devastating. 40 Valoran warships destroyed, 20 more crippled and drifting. The survivors fled back toward Valoran space, their perfect fleet in ruins. The humans had lost 8 ships, a painful cost, but nothing compared to Valoran casualties. Kyle Hudson stood on his damaged bridge looking at the tactical display. They had won. Against the strongest of the elder races, humanity had won decisively. Message from the Valoran flagship, the communications officer reported. They're requesting a ceasefire. Kyle was tempted to ignore it, to press the attack and destroy Eternal Wisdom's ship. But that would make this about revenge rather than justice. Put them on screen. Eternal Wisdom appeared on the display. His ancient face showed something Kyle had never seen from an elder race representative. Respect. Admiral Hudson, you have fought well. Better than I anticipated. We're not primitives, Kyle replied. We tried to tell you that diplomatically. You forced us to demonstrate it militarily. You have made your point, Eternal Wisdom acknowledged. The Valoran Dominion will cease hostilities against humanity. We will recognize your territorial claims and your right to self-governance. That's not enough, Kyle said firmly. This war didn't start because of one colony. It started because the elder races think they can do whatever they want to whoever they want. That ends now. The galaxy needs a new system, one where every species has a voice, not just the old and powerful. Eternal Wisdom was silent for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. Perhaps you are correct. Perhaps the old order has persisted too long. I will bring your proposal to the Galactic Council. You do that, Kyle said, and know this. If any elder race attacks humanity or our allies again, we won't stop at defending ourselves. We'll take the fight to your homeworlds. The age of galactic empires built on intimidation is over. Back on Earth, President Nathan Cross addressed the planet via global broadcast. Today, humanity won a great victory. But this war was never about conquest or domination. It was about demanding the respect that every species deserves. We have shown the galaxy that we will not be pushed around. Now we must show them that we can build something better than what existed before. Lisa Morgan, watching the speech from the diplomatic center, felt hope for the first time in months. The war had been terrible, but it had also created an opportunity. The elder races had maintained control through fear and superiority. Humanity had broken that control. Now the question was, what would replace it? The rebellion on Naxos had spread like wildfire across the Valoran Dominion. Crix, the Draven resistance leader who Captain Maya Torres had trained, now commanded a fleet of captured Valoran ships and led his people in open warfare against their former masters. His message to other subject species was simple. The humans proved it could be done. If one small species from a dangerous world could defeat the elder races, why couldn't they? On Earth, Lisa Morgan found herself in an unexpected new role. Instead of representing humanity to hostile alien governments, she was now coordinating with dozens of species who wanted to join what was being called the Coalition of Free Worlds. Her office in Geneva was filled with holographic displays showing alien representatives from across the galaxy. The Meridians are sending a delegation, her assistant, Carlos Webb, reported. Carlos was a former trade negotiator who had adapted surprisingly well to the chaos of galactic politics. They're an aquatic species from the Korvax border. They've been under Korvax rule for 600 years. Lisa studied the information on the Meridians. What do they want? Protection, alliance, and help overthrowing their occupiers, Carlos replied. Same as everyone else. The galaxy is watching what humans did to the Valorans, and suddenly everyone thinks revolution is possible. Is it? Lisa asked. We barely won those battles. We took heavy losses. Can we really help all these species fight for independence? We don't have to fight for them, Carlos pointed out. We just have to teach them what we know. Show them the tactics that worked for us. The rest is up to them. The Meridian delegation arrived at Earth 3 days later. Their leader, a being called Current Swift, required a specialized water-filled chamber to survive. Through translation software, Current Swift explained his people's situation. The Korvax took our world because we have rich mineral deposits. They mine our oceans and take everything of value. We are slaves in all but name. But we watched what humanity did. You showed that the elder races can bleed. Lisa chose her words carefully. The coalition isn't about humanity leading a crusade against the elder races. It's about species having the right to govern themselves. If you join, you'll be expected to defend not just yourselves, but other members. Are you willing to do that? We are, Current Swift replied without hesitation. Better to fight and possibly die free than to live forever as slaves. Over the next month, the coalition grew rapidly. The Meridians joined, bringing 12 worlds and a respectable fleet of converted civilian ships. The krill, an insectoid species with natural talent for engineering, contributed their technical expertise. The Theron, silicon-based beings who could survive in environments that would kill most species, offered to build defensive platforms in harsh systems where others couldn't operate. But the most important addition came from an unexpected source. The Zenthari, the same species that had tried to take New Terra, approached the coalition with a surprising proposal. Ambassador Crystalline Mind, who had been humiliated at the Battle of New Terra, requested a private meeting with Admiral Kyle Hudson. Kyle was suspicious but agreed. They met in a neutral space station, both bringing minimal security. I come with a proposal that will shock both our peoples, Crystalline Mind began. His crystal form pulsed with colors that indicated nervousness. The Zenthari Collective wishes to join your coalition. Kyle stared at the alien in disbelief. Your people tried to conquer us. Why would we trust you now? Because we learned something from our defeat, Crystalline Mind replied. The Galactic Council has ruled through fear and superiority for millennia. But that system is collapsing. The Valorans are weakened. The Korvax are dealing with rebellions across their empire. The old order is dying. We can either cling to it and die with it, or we can join something new. This isn't about survival of the fittest, Kyle warned. The coalition is based on mutual respect and equal partnership. Every species has an equal voice regardless of how powerful they are. I understand, Crystalline Mind said. And that is precisely why it will succeed where the old system failed. The Xanthari were wrong to view humanity as inferior. We paid for that mistake. Now we wish to correct it by becoming partners rather than enemies. Kyle took the proposal back to Earth. The reaction was mixed. Many humans were angry that the species who had attacked them now wanted to be allies. President Nathan Cross called for a vote among coalition members, knowing that this decision would define what kind of organization they were building. If we accept the Xanthari, Nathan said in his address to the coalition assembly, we send a message that past enemies can become future friends. If we reject them, we send a different message, that this coalition is only for those who supported us from the beginning. I believe the first message is more powerful. The vote was close, but in the end, the Xanthari were accepted into the coalition. Crystalline Mind's first act as a coalition member was to share Xanthari defensive technology with other members. The technology that had failed against human kinetic weapons proved very effective against Korvax energy weapons. Meanwhile, the Korvax Empire was fracturing. War Master Thorax had lost his position after the defeated Earth. The new leadership was more cautious but also more desperate. They knew that if they didn't act soon, their empire would collapse completely. We must sue for peace, Battleseeker argued in the Korvax War Council. We cannot defeat the coalition. We cannot even hold our own territory against the rebellions. But the hardliners refused. We are Korvax. We do not surrender to lesser species. We fight until victory or extinction. The decision was made to launch one final assault, not against Earth, which had proven too well defended, but against a newer coalition member, the Meridian homeworld. The Korvax believed that if they could destroy one coalition world, the others would lose faith and the alliance would dissolve. Captain Jack Morrison received intelligence about the planned attack from Captain Sophie Blake's reconnaissance network. Sophie's stealth ships had become incredibly effective at gathering information across the galaxy. The Korvax didn't know it yet, but they had no secrets from humanity. 40 Korvax warships heading for the Meridian homeworld, Jack told Admiral Kyle Hudson. They'll arrive in 4 days. The Meridians have only a dozen defensive ships. They'll be wiped out. Then we don't let them arrive, Kyle said simply. How fast can we get a relief force there? Jack checked the calculations. If we push our faster-than-light drives to their limits, we can get there in 3 days. But that only gives us 24 hours to prepare defenses. It's enough, Kyle decided. Mobilize the fleet, and send a message to all coalition members. If the Korvax want to test our unity, we'll show them what unity means. The call went out across the coalition, and the response was overwhelming. The Xanthari sent ships. The Krill sent their fastest cruisers. The Draven, still fighting their own war of independence, dispatched a squadron to help defend their allies. Even the Theron, who had no warships of their own, contributed by transporting defensive platforms at speeds that should have been impossible. When the Korvax fleet arrived at the Meridian homeworld, expecting to find a few desperate defenders, they instead found 30 coalition warships waiting for them. Ships from a dozen different species, all flying under the same banner, all committed to defending a world they had never visited. The Korvax commander, a warrior named Strikehard, stared at his tactical display in disbelief. This is impossible. How did they gather so many ships so quickly? His sensor officer provided the answer. They have faster-than-light communication across their entire alliance. They coordinate like a single fleet, not separate nations. Strikehard realized he was facing something unprecedented. The elder races had ruled through division, keeping subject species isolated and weak. The coalition had learned from that mistake. They were stronger together than any of them could be alone. All ships withdraw, Strikehard ordered. We cannot win this battle. But Colonel Danny Wright's fighters were already moving to cut off their retreat. No running this time, Danny transmitted. You came here to teach the coalition a lesson. Time for you to learn one instead. The battle was brief and decisive. The Korvax fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. More importantly, they were fighting an enemy that had something they lacked: unity of purpose. Coalition ships protected each other, covering weaknesses and amplifying strengths. A Xanthari ship would draw fire while a human ship flanked the enemy. Meridian vessels would provide support while Draven ships pressed the attack. After 2 hours, Strikehard surrendered. His fleet was battered and broken, and continuing to fight would only result in pointless deaths. As his ship was boarded by coalition forces, He found himself face to face with Captain Maya Torres, who accepted his surrender. "Why do you fight so hard for species that are not your own?" Strikeheart asked. "The Meridians are not human. Why risk your lives for them?" Maya's answer was simple. "Because they're our friends, and humans don't abandon their friends." The Battle of the Meridian homeworld marked the end of the Korvax Empire's aggressive expansion. Within weeks, the Korvax government sued for peace. They agreed to recognize the independence of all species.